Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another Watts in a Performance where today we are going to be reviewing some classical music. Now, reviewing classical pianists and their playing is always a little bit dicey for me because I only have a fraction of the ability and accolades that these professional pianists have. And also, the classical piano community tends to be pretty opinionated and they're pretty verbal about their opinions. And so, with a bit of hesitancy, I'm doing this review because Lang is one of the more divisive pianists, shall we say. You either love his technicality and his showmanship and the way that he plays and the brilliance in his technique, or you think that his interpretations are lifeless, that he's overhyped, that he's unfaithful and disrespectful to the interpretation or the composer and how it's meant to be played. Why don't we just sit back and take a listen and see how Lang is playing and see if we can smell what he's cooking. Very light. You hear there's a change of pedaling there. Very briefly. We've talked about playing repeated notes in the past, how we want to switch fingers when we're playing the repeated note. And that's for a little bit of control and a little bit of change in the tonality. But it's interesting to note that in the first time he goes through the phrase, he plays with pedal, and in the second time, he plays without pedal. And that creates already a little bit of interesting contrast, because otherwise, his tone stays about the same. And now on to the next section. So he takes the initiative to get a lot faster, and it is quite difficult to get all these notes to sound. It helps to have a lighter keyboard, a lighter piano, which Steinway & Sons tends to be. My Yamaha is a little bit heavy, so it's difficult for me to get as fast as that. Then we get to the peak of our phrase, right? We want to take he takes a little bit of time to give it a little bit of emphasis. And so instead of having to crescendo very hard in order to get that sort of tension, because he pulls, it creates a very similar feeling. And there is a little bit of an eyebrow-raising moment too, the way that he lands onto it. He doesn't necessarily get much louder, even though in the Paderewski score, it's marked as a forte. He gets a little bit more, I suppose, urgent, right? Almost in a sense to make up for that energy. Still very dry, very bouncy, and has brilliant contrast. It's very interesting, very unique, right? When you get to a part where you want to create that sort of tonal contrast, what Lang is doing is he slows down as well to draw even more attention to it. So if I change texture by becoming a little bit more legato without the rubato, it's noticeable, but it's not as noticeable as if I insert rubato. You know, I'm doing much more exaggerated and much less tastefully than Lang is, but you get the point. It sounds a little bit drier than he did before. Again, same emphasis, but not quite as much as last time, right? The first time when he got to the top, right? But this time it's like almost like a very brief pause, a little bit of. He keeps going. It's not doing the same thing every single time, which is important. Because too often when you try to milk the same spot or like say repeated phrases or a similar phrase in music, a lot of times beginners and intermediate students will do it the same way every single time. So there's no suspense or anticipation for something different. By even slightly varying what he's doing, it creates an extra layer of interpretation. Same thing there with the da-da-da-dum. He doesn't take the repeat, but this is a little bit more of a handsome section, right? It's a little bit heavier. But then once he gets to this phrase that he really wants to bring out and bring your ear to, right? Because again, it's defying the set expectation for that entire section. Wow, he takes a lot of time there, and I actually appreciate that. Because a lot of times people just want to keep moving. Look how close his fingers are staying to the key when he plays that run. You see how his hands are very bouncy during this like more percussive section, but then the closer he gets to this, the the less the wrist comes up and the closer his hand sticks to the keys, and that creates that little legato that we're looking for. So here's a nice change up from previously. There's a very nice variation there. I like that. And I think that's one thing that we can take away already. Almost every single time he's played a repetitive section, a section where we've heard before, it's a little bit different. There's always this slight variation. And for a piece that has so many repeats and reutilizes the same thematic materials and motifs and stuff like that, it's actually quite important because a lot of times people just play it the same. Love the bounciness here. It's like the first time I feel like we've hit like a more aggressive like forte. It's tempered by taking a lot of time. A very nice transition into these sections. If you'll notice, what he's doing is he's using a lot of rubato, right, to smooth over the transitions, which is perfectly fine. That's very interpretive. Some teachers, some pianists will say you want to keep moving, right? You don't want to feel like the piece is ending at a certain spot, and I agree with that. But also, if you're tasteful about it, and you're maybe you have a different sort of vibe that you're going for when you're playing, you can take a lot of time in order to smooth over those transitions. I think I would recommend to more beginner and intermediate pianists go with the more conventional, hey, keep things moving. Because if you take too much time in certain spots, it's hard for you to recover and feel like the whole piece is cohesive. Right. If you're like at Lang's level, if you've thought about it enough, if you like tried all the different things and this is how you want to play it, just make sure that the piece still sounds like a piece and not just disjoint movements put together, if that makes sense. That's very fast. There he did not slow down to transition. It's almost like he truncated this F from a quarter to an eighth. I guess it's tasteful to some people. Yeah, that's very heavy, right? We haven't seen so much weight go into the keys yet, right? And with that big D flat chord, he really pushes it in. And immediately throughout the rest of that phrase brings it all the way back down to just his fingers. Taking more time in this section, I agree. I think these sorts of things in the Chopin waltzes are very nice for you to slow down and take a breather, so then it's a little bit of a change of pace. Abruptly going back to the next section, which I think I agree with as well. Although I think that there's a case to be made for trying to transition a little bit more nicely. Really have the abrupt change come with the fortissimo as opposed to at the beginning with the when you're still in the piano. But Lang, of course, hits it immediately. Right, which is also a different type of like snap back to reality. I think you rarely hear something like this played so dry because people like to pedal Chopin a lot. It goes even faster. Yeah, this is for sure a section I think that you can show off your technicality. See, almost no hold there, right? Compared to the first time they did. Right, this time it was almost like perfectly in tempo and in rhythm with what he was playing. I will say the dryness really does accentuate these sforzandos here. Because if you were holding the pedal, then it'll bleed in the next part. It almost takes a little bit of the punch out of it. It almost looks like he was working the pedal there a little bit. But since we can't see his foot. Yeah, maybe it's just my imagination, but it sounds like he dropped the mutes maybe halfway, right, to reduce some of it a little bit, and then all the way down so it fades out a little bit quicker. But it could be my imagination. It is very, very much so a showman. I feel like A lot of times you'd be told, like, keep it in the same tempo. And at the very end, you slow down a little bit. But he takes this in a completely different tempo. And it works because he's playing the story and playing the feeling very well. It is very technically impressive. There's holding that pedal. Very showy of an ending. Very flashy too, the way that he's playing this. So overall, I think it was a very interesting interpretation. I don't know if I myself would play it this way if I ever got to this piece. One, because I'm lacking the technical ability, but also because I just don't hear things the same way. But overall, as the listener, I think I found the experience very enjoyable. So I was taken on along this like very roller coastery ride, right, with a lot of surprises and a lot of twists and turns. Now, whether or not I enjoy the interpretation, right, it depends on whether or not I feel like I fall out of the roller coaster, if that makes sense. And I don't think I fell out, like really at all. I don't think he lost me at any spot. Only at the very end, I feel like when he hit that cello rondo, very, very abruptly. Overall, very cohesive, surprisingly so. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below whether or not you enjoyed this performance. And until next time, everybody, peace.